Hi and welcome! This video is all about two of my favorite creative samplers in the Eurorack format, the Morphagene and the Arbhar. With the introduction of the new Arbhar version 2.0 firmware, both modules now boast a set of similar features, including the import of sound files from your PC. I made this video to showcase some of the similarities and differences of both modules, and I will end the video with a recommendation on which could be right for you. Here's what's to come. Let's talk about the specs and usability of both modules first, before diving into some sound examples for each. They both are quite similar modules at first glance, as they can both live record samples or preload pre-made samples from a flash drive. The Morphagene is a tape-inspired sampler, which has 1 to 5 aligned playheads. It plays one sample at a time that is max 170 seconds long, and you can save 32 samples on the SD card. Morphagene is 20 HP wide and retails at around 580 euros at the time of this video. Arbhar is a granular synthesizer that can host 6 samples of 30 seconds each and play up to 88 grains at a given time. It can save 36 sets of 6 samples, has an analog preamp, and is about 18 to 22 HP wide depending on how many of the expanders you install in your rack. Arbhar costs around 660 euros. So anyway, let's actually get into the soundscapes. So the first example I want to show you is just a field recording of some birds. But what I do especially like about the Morphagene is that you can zoom in on really small sound events in a sound file and get out really interesting textures that you may have not expected before. What I like about the Morphagene as well is that you can freeze samples in time. So if you have a tonal progression in your sample, you can basically retextualize, remix that by hand. So the Morphagene really excels at restructuring samples that you have. What I've done here is I've used the Amen break and I've put markers into the sound file every quarter step. So now I can use the Morphagene organize feature to quickly jump in between those steps, essentially remixing the organization of the sound file on the go. And of course you can make this much crazier. So as a next step, I'm using CV-in and organize to change the sample position in real time. And I'm using the end of gene output on the Morphagene to trigger a bassline at the same time. So here's a different way of rearranging a sample. I'm using the gene size to randomly change the loop length that I have in my sample. So the higher the gene size, the more sound I will hear from my original sample. So I'll play you the original sample here. And what you will hear is that through this process, the whole sample gets completely rearranged, reorganized, reinterpreted. I'm also controlling the pitch via CV, so I get different blips and bloops whenever I'm changing the gene size. What's really important about this patch is though that I'm using the SOS, the sound on sound VC-in, all the way on the top of the Morphagene as a VCA, so I can keep it tightly synced with my kick drum. That's really neat. So looking at the Arbhar, I find it works really well when you have a sample that changes over time. So in this setup here, I just have a CVE in into the spray and into the position CV in of the instro, and I can change that using a joystick. The sample that I'm using has a more subdued beginning and then has much more detail later on that now I can scroll through using a joystick. So what I think the Arbhar really excels at is at combining different sound layers into new textures. So for this example here, I've added 6 different types of piano hits, and I'm gonna texturize them all together by having CV into the layer function. So in this example, I'm using the Instro Arbhar as an effects module. I have a synthesizer input going in, and whenever I trigger the synthesizer, I'm also triggering the record function on the Arbhar. What I'm also doing is I have another trigger set up that when I am triggering the synthesizer, the intensity of the Arbhar will be 0, and when the synthesizer finishes playing, the Arbhar will come in with the granularized textures of that same synthesizer. So it's a bit of a call and response patch. So there you have it. Both are great modules with an out-of-the-box signature sound that you can either embrace or truly reshape. For me, Morphagene excels at 2 functions, being a magnifying glass for scrutinizing sound and microsound material, and as a sample chopper and sample rearranger. I recommend using the Morphagene if you want to keep the amount of layering of a sample low. Because Morphagene does not create a high number of simultaneous grains, you will keep a sense of separate sound objects intact, and this makes it ideal to use it on drum samples but also other gestural sound material, for example field recordings. While the Morphagene excels at creating gestures, Arbhar is amazing for textures. If you're looking for a drone maker, you're rewarded with the ability to use 6 different layers at the same time, making the Arbhar great at creating hybrid sound textures. Once you keep the intensity and gene length low, you can also use it to add short, sparse percussive elements to your sound material. The ability to now use a USB stick to load stereo sound recordings from your PC directly into the Arbhar really upped its versatility tenfold. As you probably noticed, Arbhar has, like all granular effects, a particular sound to it, the granular sound, so make sure that's what you're looking for. With any module, deciding which is right for you comes down to your needs and preferences. I often use the Morphagene at the beginning of a signal chain and the Arbhar as a dynamic effect towards the end of a signal chain. If you're starting all fresh in a modular world with no prior equipment, but you have lots of sound recordings, you can't go wrong with a Morphagene and a complementary CV module. That's actually how I started with Eurorack 10 years ago. If you already have a dedicated sampler, a guitar or other hardware that could benefit from an end-of-chain granulizer with reverb, onset detection, and the ability to play 6 simultaneous sound layers, the Arbhar got you covered. I hope this video was helpful to you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next video.